It's good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy. Back from Hometown Commander for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I take my first pass at the commander in front of us on a budget on my quest out brew the magic world. You know the motto, baby. It's ABB, always be brewing, and that's what we're back to do today. That deck list is going to be down in the description for you below. So I'd really appreciate if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe. Consider checking out those links in the description. I'd appreciate it. But we're celebrating the Secret Scare Week this week for the Secret Lair. And probably one of the more controversial ones was Dwight from The Office coming to Magic on multiple commanders. But today I wanted to cover a commander I've never covered for the channel. And we're going to talk about Dwight O'Lantern as the Reaper King. A 5 mana, 5 color commander. 5 individual pips of either 2 colorless mana or one of the Wooburg colors for a legendary Scarecrow. All other Scarecrows get +1/+1. And then whenever another Scarecrow we control enters, we get to destroy target permanent. And that's where the Reaper Kings are going to have us excel. Playing these Scarecrows and trying to blink and copy them to destroy our opponent's permanents, get them back, and try to take over the game with all of our Scarecrows. I want to say a quick thank you to the channel members. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in seeing all of our videos just a little bit earlier for just $1 a month, consider checking that out down below. Well, all right. Remember, we got basically 2 things we can play. There's a lot of actual Scarecrows with the typing that we could play. And then there are creatures that can become that type. Things like Changelings or something like Adaptive Automaton, which comes in as a Scarecrow. Gives all of our Scarecrows +1/+1. A regular cohort is a Changeling, so it's every creature type. And then it makes a token when it comes in, it's every creature type. So basically getting, 2 Scarecrows for the cost. Fang Skullkin says for 2 mana we can give a black creature wither until end of turn. An interesting ability. I think most time it's going to end up targeting Reaper King, as we don't have a ton of colored Scarecrows, but we do have some. Metallic Mimic comes in as a Scarecrow and then has every other Scarecrow come with a counter on it. Mirror Entity is a Scarecrow and has a brutal ability. We can pay X to have all of our creatures become X, base power type is XX till end of turn, and get all creature types. This is huge because then, on a later turn, if we have some mana, we can really allow our Scarecrows to become a real threat. Oasis Gardener lets us tap for a mana of any color. Pillapala can untap to add a mana of any color. There are interactions with Pillapala that can create infinite mana. We just don't have any of them in this deck, but still an interesting Scarecrow nonetheless. We have Rendemaw, the alternate commander from that Duskmourn commander deck. Whenever it enters, whenever you play a card with 2 or more card types, each player creates a tap 2/2 black bird token with flying, and they're goaded for the rest of the game. So can try to get your opponents attacking each other with these birds. Scarecrow Guide can pay 1 to add a mana of any color. This is nice, of course, when you're trying to cast Reaper King or some of your other things, getting your mana into the right color. Scaretiller says whenever it becomes tapped, we can either put a land from our hand on the battlefield tapped or return a land from our graveyard to the battlefield tapped. A very interesting ability if you think about it, because there's more than one way to get one of our creatures tapped. Again, most of the time that's going to be attacking, but we could in effects that could allow our Scarecrows to help tap for mana, and then that'd be a good way to do that. Scorn Effigy lets you foretell it for 2, and then play it for 0 on a later turn. Again, setting up when Reaper King's down so we can get it to come in. Scuttlemutt either taps for mana of any color or taps to have a creature become a color of our choice in the turn. This ability works well with things like that Fang Skulkin that lets certain creatures of certain colors, have certain abilities. Shire Scarecrow lets you, put a mana into anything else, depending on how you need it. Tarian Mauler, of course, is a Changeling, so it's going to be a Scarecrow and grows for each time our opponent casts a spell. Unsettled Mariner is going to effectively give all of our creatures Ward 1, which is really nice, helping us to protect them a little bit. Wildfield Scarecrow lets us sack it to search for up to 2 basic lands, reveal them, put them into our hand. Nice if we need to even out our colors a little bit, or we don't have a way to really pursue all of our colors for Reaper King. This could help us early game. Late game, it could be a way just to ramp and get more mana out. Wildfire Worker Folk. Duskmourn did actually have a couple Scarecrows. This one has Delirium, so if there's 4 more creature card types in our graveyard, it gets +1/+1 and Trample. Otherwise, it's just a hasty 3/2 for 2. Wing Rattle Scarecrow gives all of our gives itself flying as long as we control a blue creature, and persist as long as we control a black creature. Again, Reaper King would count for all of those, which is kind of nice. Wreckage Wickerfolk from Aether Drift just comes in and surveils 2, and it's flying through the air. And then we have a couple of artifacts that can make us shapeshifter tokens, which again will have every creature type. So that's nice because then you can get, Scarecrows right every turn off the mana there. Maskwood Nexus also just turns all of our creatures into Scarecrows, making sure that anything that comes in is going to be able to trigger the Reaper King, right? Get the buff and trigger its triggered ability. But I think where the deck really wants to excel is finding a way to get our Scarecrows in again and again, not just the first time when we cast them. And I think both copying and blinking are an effective way to look at this. There aren't a ton of legendary Scarecrows in our deck, so things like Doppelgang or Rite of Replication and these blue spells that copy creatures are great because they're going to give us great copies of those Scarecrows, especially if we want to pick ones that have evasion or any other sort of ability to add on top of it. You could pick something like Adaptive Automaton or things like that, right? They give the buff, and then you're giving more buffs to all your creatures. Another round lets you exile a number of creatures you control and then return them to the battlefield under their owner's control, and you do this X more times. It's a really fun ability and can allow you to just blink creatures a bunch of times, not only just for Reaper King triggers, but maybe for other triggers as well. Double Major can copy any creature spell we control, except the copy isn't legendary, which is fun. Can make us a non-legendary copy of Reaper King. Also meaning that then you could then copy that copy of Reaper King if you wanted to get more value from that. The rest of the spells in this section are really just blinking the Scarecrows. Eerie Annulu can do as many of them as you want. Ephemerate and Ghostly Flicker can do 1 or 2 respectively with the Flicker. Again, get them out, bring them back in, get the Reaper King trigger right, destroy something. Molten Echoes adds a nice, interesting layer on top. We choose a creature type whenever it comes in, and whenever a creature, non-token creature that type comes in, we make a copy of it that goes away at the end of turn. Again, the goal there is just getting that extra Reaper King trigger, destroying our opponent's things. And then Reflections of Lijaria copying each Scarecrow we cast, again, means more Reaper King triggers. It's easy, I think, to feel like a broken record, but it's important to remember that Reaper King's ability is a huge deal. Destroying permanents like that is going to be really beneficial, and I think the reason it's so beneficial is that it's easy for us sometimes to remember that we remove more than just creatures. Like the creatures are some of the easiest card types in Magic to remove, right? We have such cheap removal, especially in our colors, but the important thing to remember is not every deck can deal with artifacts and enchantments. And in fact, some decks have a very hard time doing it unless they're countering them on the stack. So this ability to destroy target permanent is a huge deal because you also will unfortunately realize very quickly that that does not say non-land permanent, meaning that Reaper King can also destroy lands, which is not really ideal. It's not something we really want to do, but I think it's important to keep in the back of your mind. That there's a reality where you can really start punishing your opponents for your Scarecrows coming in. It's going to take a lot to get there because I think there's always going to be better choices, but it's something to keep in the back of your mind. But how do we add some more value? I mean, we have things like Roaming Throne that just double up all of our Scarecrows triggers, meaning Reaper King's ability is going to go off twice. Banner of Kinship and cards like it can really buff all of our Scarecrows, making them a real threat. Tezzeret's +2 deals X damage to each opponent, where X is the number of artifacts we control. We gain X life. This is a big deal because almost to my knowledge, every Scarecrow in our deck that isn't, Metallic Mimic or Adaptive Automaton or whatever is an artifact. Some of those shapeshifty creatures are not, but again, most of them are going to be, meaning that hopefully Tezzeret's going to make that a real threat to our opponents. Panharmonicon can double up our ETB triggers. Again, great because that's what Reaper Kings is. Kindred Discovery can help us draw through our deck whenever Scarecrows come in or attack. We're drawing cards. And then any joins up is going to double up Reaper King's trigger. Whenever a triggered ability of a legend goes off, it goes off an additional time. So again, multiple destroys per Scarecrow can go a really long way in hurting our opponents. But I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again, no deck's ever complete. It's my first shot at Reaper King. And I think going into testing, I wasn't sure how much to care about artifacts, right? We have other shapeshifters like Universal Automaton that are artifacts too, and I thought about something like Padim, to give them all hexproof. It does also protect the Reaper King, which is something I didn't really realize until I was putting together the cards to consider, and I was like, that actually makes more sense now that I think about it, because then that's going to help protect our commander a little bit. But there are also more shapeshifters. If you we're worried about the average scarecrow maybe not being as impactful as you want it to. We can look at more ways to make have shapeshifters or make shapeshifter tokens. If you want to do that. I just think you lose a little bit of the benefit of them being artifacts that we can take advantage of. I just think you kind of got to find where you want to lie on that spectrum and choose your creatures for it. My other thought was getting into something like Teleportation Circle or Conjurer's Closet, which I believe is in the list. On your end step, blinking an artifact or a creature. Again, getting another Reaper King trigger. And just making sure that we're putting as much hurt on our opponents as we can. But let's do what we love to do on the channel the most and get into our playtests. Remember, the goal of playtests on our channel is not to find Magical Christmas Land. It's not just to show off all our best plays, but to get in some gameplay scenarios and kind of understand what hands are we looking to keep and how are we going to set this thing up. This one may only be a 3-lander, but we kind of get the privilege of starting with this Leyline of the Guild Pact on the battlefield, meaning all of our lands are every basic land type. This is really nice because then we basically don't have to worry about fixing our own mana. Here we can just keep up this Arcane Denial in case something comes up dangerous. I kind of like the Patchwork Banner here, given the buff to all of our Scarecrows. Now with the Lantern down, we've got 5 mana, so we got enough mana for Reaper King next turn. I don't really want to use something like Changeling Outcast just yet. I'd rather get the trigger off Reaper King. So I think what I'd probably do is just hold up the 2 mana for the Arcane Denial if we haven't used it already. So now at 5 mana, obviously I think Reaper King makes the most sense. Know that all of our permanents are all colors as well. This is really useful for things like those Scarecrows that care about things being certain colors. But with the Roaming Throne in, that'll get 2 triggers, right? Because it does enter as a Scarecrow, so we will get double we'll get double the thing there, and then just go Changeling for another one. So now we're setting up, right? We're really starting to hurt our opponents on these Scarecrows coming in and taking out their key things. This turn, I guess Maskwood could make sense too, but I kind of like just doing the Cohort, because the Cohort makes the Scarecrow token, makes that Changeling token. So you're actually going to be getting 4 triggers right here, 2 for the Cohort and 2 for the Shapeshifter, right, off of Reaper King. And then I think you could start to see where this deck really wants to shine. Yes, we are a little bit worried about removal, but the nice part is, we have the mana, and, worst case, we can go for the Cultivate and get a couple more lands in and get Reaper King back down. The important thing is we're really starting to set up well. And as we destroy things out of our way, then we can try to get these into combat. I think it might make sense to, if you notice you're doing well on the destruction, but you're not doing well on the actual hitting hard side, maybe it's worth looking into Coat of Arms and Coat of Arms and Shared Animosity and Cathar's Crusade. These ways to just buff your creatures. But I think that's something we need to see in testing. Does our deck need help, right, finishing out some of that stuff? We have something like Banner, but do we need more of that? Here I got the 3-lander with the Kadama's Reach, so we should be able to get all 5 of our colors, make sure that Reaper King gets in for its regular cost. There's the Scuttlemutt, which can help with the mana color, right? And then a Renmaw up on the top end. I think it's just Kadama's Reach here, so let's see. We have black, red. I think we have all of our colors. It's just going to be getting ourselves access to more. We'll get an island in. I think we'll put a swamp in hand. And again, Renmaw is another great piece for us. Can be very useful. I think I'll just go Reaper King here. This turn. I'd love to play Scuttlemutt and Renmaw. I just can't. So I'll play Renmaw, get the 1 trigger. Again, I'm trying to get as many Scarecrows as I can before I play the Banner, right? I just think I play the Discovery, and then we'll end up drawing 2 off of attacking, right? Because we'll end up attacking with both of these guys. Going back to the next turn. 8 mana. We've got the Ghostly Flicker. I was going to say we could get Scuttlemutt in and go deep on the right replication if we want to. Of course, kicking the replication is the best thing we can do. And I almost don't mind that. Let's play the Scuttlemutt and draw just to see what we get right off of the Kindred Discovery. There's the Oasis Gardener. Again, another permanent destroyed. We draw again. So I've got 2 mana left. I think it would make more sense to go Chromatic Lantern into the Scuttlebutt, or into the Gardener, right? So we still end up with the same thing, but we're getting the extra fixing there. And then attack probably with, I'd say probably with Wolf. Right, they're nice threats, 6/6, 7/7. I think we're good on mana. And then now, now we could look to go into a big Rider Replication, copy, something like Oasis Gardener, get a bunch of triggers, draw a bunch of cards, and I think we're in a good position. And the only thing we're really missing is the buff, which we could do next turn. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it'd make it 11 mana. So Kicking Replication is 9. We couldn't do that this turn, but we could hold up something like Arcane Denial if we have 12, 13. And 9 plus 5 on the banner is 14. So we're almost there as far as making enough mana. But I think that's okay. I mean, you could write this turn and just hold up the Denial to protect and then banner next turn. But I think I would write probably something like the Gardener that can tap for mana, and we gain life when it comes in. And I think we're just set up there in good shape to play the banner in, and as long as nobody can wipe the board and we can keep ourselves afloat with that one Arcane Denial, then we should be able to, move into combat there on that one. Let's get into playtest number 3 here. 2-lander with a Rampant Growth and an Arcane Signet. So we do have some mana there. There's the Scarecrow. Usually flying your opponent's control, get -1, -0, and then the Scarecrow Guide to filter some of our mana. Same thing with the Mascot. It's going to filter our mana as well. I think the filter mana is important. It may not seem like it, but I think there's going to be worlds where, you need the access to do certain things, right? Here, I think we want to go for either blue or black. And then now we have enough mana to get in Reaper King, which I will. Between these 5, we should have more than enough. And then now here with 6 mana, I think we just get in Scarecrows, right? Shire Scarecrow. I guess probably we could do Pretender +1, or we could do 3. Pretender +1 makes the most sense just because it starts getting counters on it, and we still get the 2 triggers, right? Because the Blood Time Pretender still counts as a Scarecrow. And now with 6 mana, right, we triple Scarecrow. You're getting mana. You're getting counters on Bloodline Pretender. You're dealing damage, right? You're destroying things. And now we're building a nice little Scarecrow army. And then this turn, I could Doppelgang for what? I have 7 mana. Should be a Doppelgang for 1 at the moment. It would be 2 potentially if I got another land, right? Realized I could have surveilled off the Wicker Folk, but I missed that because I'm a dummy and I wasn't thinking. Don't think making 1 copy of the Doppelgang makes sense. I think it's worth waiting to make 2. So, you could do this, get some destruction aside, start attacking with, this and this. And then, like I said, really all we need is way to copy or blink, which we have. We're just, again, 1 mana off, make Doppelgang really worth it. It'd be 8 mana for 4 token copies, 2 copies of 2 things. And again, then we could destroy more things. A little bit awkward there. We didn't really see any of our ways to buff the team, which is starting to make me think that maybe that's something in testing we should look into and see if we even have enough, right? And if we need more. 5-lander with an Urza's Incubator, reducing the cost of our creature spells of the Scarecrow type by 2. And then there's the One-Eyed Scarecrow. I think we're just going to start with some of these tap lands here. Kind of wait and see what we can do to get these in. 3 mana here. I mean, I don't really want to play the Scarecrow just quite yet, right? Because we want to play Reaper King first, right? Now, Reaper King can cost 2 less, so he can actually just cost 4, and then we'd still be get the Outcast in. This turn, Roaming Throne can't be reduced because it's not a Scarecrow written on the card, so it's just going to be 4, unfortunately. But, I mean, this comes in for 1, right? And then we can crack the Evolving Wilds to just go even them out a little bit. Again, now we're doubling up our triggers off the Reaper King. 3 there, and then the Cohort, right? Making that 2/2 Changeling. There you go. There's the 4 triggers of the Reaper King to knock things down. I just realized that cohort would have cost 2 less because of it actually being a changeling, so it's going to cost 2 less because of the incubator. So we should be able to hold up something like Path to Exile here. And now, all of them are getting +2/+2. So 4, 4/4, 4/5, 6/6, 3/3, 4/4. Right. So hopefully, we can do that. And now, we can just Eerie interlude, obviously cohort, because then it comes in and makes another 2/2. And then, get more triggers. You go 1, 2, 3. And I actually just realized you get 2 because this is a Scarecrow. So that triggered ability is going to go off twice. But I think you could see that, then you could blink the cohort, getting you 2 more. And I think now we've got a nice, Scarecrow army we're set up. I know that the playtests are kind of short on this one, but like truthfully, I think the Reaper King's fairly straightforward. I think it's just about finding what payoffs you want from it, how we're going to take advantage of our Scarecrows being down. And I think after doing a little bit of playtesting, not in this video, but on my own, I think the answer is probably more buffs, Coat of Arms, Cathar's Crusade, Shared Animosity, things like that that can just better increase our Scarecrow's abilities. You also could just find ways to like also just copy Reaper King more, because then that would be a buff, right? I think you can kind of see what I mean, where I would probably drive this deck towards to make it a little bit better. But I'd love to know, what do you think of Reaper King down in the comment section below, and I will catch you all in the next